Hello and welcome to this Brain Blast. Now, I've had some requests and discussions with people lately about in the news we've had a lot about marijuana, about the cannabis, the cannabinoids, and what are their effects for and against, the benefits, because there seems to be a whole bunch of different stuff going on with what can be done and can't be done with cannabis. Now, it's quite interesting, and it's a very interesting plant, and it's a lot more complex than the average person appreciates. It's not just a mental stimulant. It's not just a mentally affecting plant. It does a lot of things. And in fact, there are a lot of varieties of the marijuana plant, and some of the plants, it's also called hemp, and it's used in the same way sort of as cotton and various other type of flaxes and forms, big for ropes, and now we learn we can make all kinds of clothing, and there's a whole bunch that can be done with these non-high THC, which is the stuff that's in it. It's a big long word, tetra, cannabis, something, and hydrate. But the thing of it is a bit odd that the entire species was banned when they did ban it, and there's quite a conspiracy about the fact, conspiracy thinking, and not too unreasonable, that coincidentally that the entire marijuana, cannabis species was banned from production, that it was around the same time as we had artificial fabrics like rayon, and then also the new cotton gins were brought into being. So there's a bit of discussion there. But as you notice, we have the heroin poppy. Well, it's very, very different from the average garden poppy, which just comes up and blows and puts out a nice flower. And we didn't ban the entire poppy species, just the heroin poppy. So it's interesting. It's food for thought. But having said that, and that's a nice little research on Google for you, the thing with marijuana is we've been noticing a lot in the last little while of refining down the oil, taking out some of the THC, the hallucinatory or the mental change, the thing that has changed your mental state, and it's been incredibly effective with things, kids with epilepsy, with some cancer treatments, certainly with pain treatments. And smoking marijuana has been known to be a sedative or a form of assisting people to help manage their pain for a long time. And we now have increased aspects of medically available marijuana, medical use marijuana. And these children that take it for epilepsy and for cancer, it's actually a very specific removal of the plant. That kids aren't smoking a joint, because that's like anything else. You're taking in a whole bunch of things which are not helpful and not useful, and so it's a breakdown to the essential effective elements. One of the big problems with the smoking of marijuana is what effects does it have on the brain, and there really is the discussion certainly one of the things in discussion is that schizophrenia and marijuana taking seem to have a relationship. But the argument is still unsolved as to whether the smoking of marijuana causes schizophrenia, or the oncoming disturbance and that occurs for someone moving towards schizophrenia leads them to take marijuana in order to relieve their mental disruption, the disturbance that's going on. And so that argument and discussion is still going on. People are still trying to work that out. So marijuana certainly seems to have those who use it, they seem to have a slower development of the cortex. And so what we have is the cortex sort of develops through the early years, but certainly the teens and the early 20s, and it develops from the back towards the front and from the bottom towards the top. And the prefrontal cortex, which is this really important area for self-regulation and self-monitoring, the executive brain that sort of holds all the rest of it into some kind of valuable and worthwhile and usable and manageable restraint, that develops last. And if we find when you look at brain scans and things of those people with schizophrenia that this process of altering and developing the cortex, and it's really a pruning where you have a reduction of unnecessary grey matter, the cell bodies, and an increase in the myelination. And that's the little sheath that goes around the axon that speeds up the process in the brain, speeds up the movement down the axon. There's talk of the fact that the THC, because it's a cannabinoid, and cannabinoids are natural in the body, we have the endocannabinoid system, and that one of the things that the endocannabinoid system is important for is in assisting in developing the production of the myelin sheath. So perhaps if we're taking up those receptors and taking up that system with exocannabinoids through the smoking of marijuana, we're actually delaying and interfering with the production of myelin, which slows down the development of the brain and possibly reduces the pruning process, but certainly creates that dullness. And the difficulty is that marijuana is commonly called dope because people seem to become dopey on it. But not only become dopey when they take it, if they take it a lot, they seem to become dopey and remain dopey even when they're not taking it. So it has had some effect on the brain. The complication is that we think of it as one plant, as one species, as one element. And I think that's where its greatest difficulty comes. And that goes back to that political action of banning the entire species of plant in a most unusual fashion, as I say, which we didn't do with poppies. We just banned the particular drug-based plant. And so there's this sense that marijuana is one thing. It's one thing that grows, and you get it, you smoke it, and you get high. Not realizing that there are many, many forms of the species, some very low in the THC, and they're very useful in flax production and in fibers and now in making clothes. And it's used in all kinds of areas. It's used where we used to use all kinds of other different fibers. It's used to strengthen things like fibrous cement. It's used to strengthen bricks. It's used as all kinds of ways in which it's utilized. And as you're breaking it down and bringing it down to essential elements, it can be very useful as a medical form of marijuana. But as I say, the difficulty is we think of it only as something that gets you high. And these little children that are having the medical dosage, the medical marijuana oil, they're not getting high and doped out on this medication. What they're doing is it is helping to work with the cannabinoid system in their own brains to enable them to better function and manage their disability, their epilepsy and their pain levels. So that's a brief look into it. Is it definitely something that causes schizophrenia? We don't know. Is it something that seems to alter the development of the brain and so certainly in the teenage years and the early 20s is very unwise to be taking large dosages of this? I think that's a pretty big concern. Is it something that helps to reduce pain? I think that's pretty much proven, but do you have to smoke it and therefore be affected by all the other or ingest all the other problems and certainly those areas of smoke into the lungs? Maybe not. Maybe we need to bring it down just to a medical form of marijuana that does the effect. Use it beneficially, as we have with heroin, where we've taken heroin and we've produced all kinds of different sedatives along the way that aren't addictive, that aren't causing all terrible problems by being thoughtful about it. Is it something that we're going to be able to get rid of? Let's not get rid of it all. Let's actually rethink about the fact that there is this form of marijuana plant, which we have to be careful of, this form of marijuana plant, which is pretty much, you could smoke 6 tons of it and you wouldn't even, you wouldn't even raise anything, let alone get high. And this form, which is a beautiful crop that is very beneficial, and perhaps now it's time to get rid of cotton and move on to other fibers. So let's break it up and think about it as a variety of plants, just like we do the poppy, for the heroin poppy to the decorative poppy that we have in the garden. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what's going on in the brain. And there's also other areas of the body, of course. Remember, the brain and the body are all connected, but I was just talking about the brain for today. So check it out, look it up, expand your thinking. Don't just see things in their simplistic form, because simplistic just means taking all the real stuff out. Simple, sure, get it down to a simple, straightforward element, but simplistic sort of just gets rid of the stuff that helps you truly understand what the thing is all about. And marijuana? Yeah, pot, that's one thing. Fabric, that's another thing. Medical marijuana, distilled down into special oils for people with epilepsy and cancer and pain things. Another thing again. Maybe 3 totally different stories. So for now, that's a bit of a brain blast, a bit of a social comment, a bit of an interesting look into a very highly charged subject at the moment. So thanks very much, and bye for now.